Welcome to Salute Your Sports. The whole gang is here for back-to-back weeks. I'm Kamenenchev with Tom Castleman and Drew Brackett. We recap a wild week of conference championship football featuring two double-digit comebacks, plus some quarterback retired, whatever his name is. We'll have some NBA talk as well, sort of a midseason report. Winter Olympics starting up this week. Don't worry, Drew. I'll keep my preview much briefer than the Summer Olympics. Our betting locks of the week, all that and more.
And of course, a little bit of breaking news coming out as well, as a lawsuit has been filed against the NFL. Very pertinent, given that we are kind of toward the tail end of coach hiring season. So we'll be touching on that as well.
Well, we'll start off with the Bengals and the Chiefs game. Bengals come back, pull off the upset over Kansas City, 27-24. They overcame that 18-point differential. And Common, what do you think of that game?
Yeah, crazy comeback by the Bengals. I mean, I think the turning point was the end of the first half. It was 21-10 Chiefs. They were up 21-3. Then they were up 21-10 at the half. They were on the goal line. They chose to go for it. They didn't kick the field goal. They maybe thought they can get a field goal in or an extra play in. But Mahomes threw it to Kelsey, or not Kelsey, excuse me. Mahomes threw it to Hill. Hill was stopped on the 2-yard line. The clock ran out in the first half. Could have been 28-10 or 24-10. Not an insurmountable lead, but I think it does make it harder at 14 points or 18 points at the half as opposed to just 11. So that was a key turning point. But the biggest story to me is that the Bengals won the game with their defense. We came in here talking about all these points. I kid you not, I looked at betting predictions across the board. Almost every single person I saw pick in this game, including all of us, had the over in this game. Everyone's like, it's going to be a shootout. And it was a relatively low-scoring game, certainly not a 14-13 game, but the under did hit in this game. Looked like the over was going to hit at halftime. Second half was all about the defense. Bengals didn't get a great offensive performance. Joe Burrow only had 250 pass yards, which is not a lot in the National Football League, especially for a guy like him. They actually got 4 field goals, and one of their touchdowns was a screen pass that was set up after like a Chiefs interception. Also, they gave him good field position. So the Bengals came back because of that forced turnover, then got the touchdown, and they got a bunch of field goals. So that was the story to me. They dropped back. They switched to a 4-3, actually, put an extra guy in coverage, and the Chief guys were not open at all. It was 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, turnover, field goal. I mean, the Chiefs didn't score a single touchdown in the second half. And we came in here that, like, the way the Bengals are going to win is if Joe Burrow's protected, which he was. The Chiefs are actually lower half in the league in sacks. So maybe that helped the Bengals have more time to pass. But they really didn't win because of Joe Burrow. They didn't really win because of Jamar Chase. I mean, they had their moments because they're great players, but they were below their season averages, both of those guys. They won because of the defense. Eli Apple completely shut down Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill was nowhere to be seen in the second half. The Chiefs had an opportunity to get a touchdown late. Mahomes was off. You guys know I think Mahomes is the GOAT. Mahomes wasn't good in the second half either. I mean, it was a combination of Mahomes, Reed, but I think a lot of the credit has to go to the Bengals. They D'd up the Chiefs. And a lot of times when you have a big comeback, it's all about like your offense storming back. But they stormed back with defense and special teams. That is what stood out to me. The Bengals defense, which has been up and down this season, got torched in the first half, 3 touchdown passes, more than 200 yards for Mahomes, under 100 yards in the second half, no touchdowns. Hats off to the Bengals D.
Absolutely, and hats off to the O-line as well. I know that pass rush isn't a huge strength for Kansas City, but we go from the Bengals defeating the Titans despite Joe Burrow taking 9 sacks to him only getting sacked once in this game. So that was absolutely massive. And then in this age of offense kind of being king in the NFL, it's not about can a defense stop you. It's when can they stop you? Can they come up with the opportune, moments in the game? So as far as you mentioned, Common, with Mahomes in the second half, threw a couple of interceptions, and I think that there were 2 consecutive sacks on the last drive that kind of made it, can Kansas City score a touchdown, just win outright instead of forcing them to settle for a field goal and ultimately go into overtime. So that's where Cincinnati, I think, really outperformed expectations going into the game. I thought that was the weakest unit on the field, and they definitely, I think, outperformed, but were up to their optimal level. I know Trey Hendrickson got a couple of sacks as well. Read an interesting stat off of Pro Football Focus. He won 33% of his pass rush matchups. Nobody else, I think, topped 16% in the game. So 1/3 of the time he was beating who was ever trying to block him. So he just had an outstanding game as well. But yeah, that's what comes down to, is somehow, some way, the Chiefs kind of sort of stopped themselves, let themselves get stopped. It was just kind of like a weird thing to see happen. So it's definitely an unfortunate way for them to end the season. They absolutely had much, much higher hopes going in, especially with that quarterback. But Joe Burrow is showing very quickly that he doesn't blink, as Mike Tomlin likes to say, and that in these moments he's able to still be himself and really, continue to perform. That's what clutch is to me, is still to be yourself in these really, really big moments. They didn't blink, down 21-3, and then of course their rookie kicker Evan McPherson. I don't think he's missed in the postseason. I don't think he's missed this entire season, period. Just absolutely outstanding and being that difference maker in a marginal game.
Yeah, if I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I'm disappointed because you're leading at halftime. Okay, you give up the lead in regulation. Let's win it in overtime. We get the ball. Oh, we're gonna win. I mean, you get stopped. I think he threw what should have been a couple picks, but I think it ended up being a pick in the end. But yeah, not a good performance by Kansas City in the second half. The offense just had nothing at all, and that's tough to believe when they're at home at Arrowhead. And it was interesting to watch happen. But regardless, Bengals make it to the Super Bowl, and Patrick Mahomes gets to watch it on TV. Not what you'd expect.
Yeah, the Jake from State Farm can have Mahomes and Rodgers get together. They need new quarterbacks because neither of those guys will be in the Super Bowl, and a lot of expectations for both. I'll say this about Mahomes. He's human. I think all these athletes are human. I mean, Michael Jordan had like a 5 for 20 shooting performance in the NBA Finals, which people forget. So Mahomes was human in the second half. He was great in the first half. I think that Kansas City just didn't have enough. It was really crazy to watch. One thought that I had in my head was maybe they play better when they're from behind, when their backs are against the wall. Like, I don't know if they get too comfortable when they're ahead. I don't know if like the other team getting too the Bengals had to risk it. They had to get aggressive. I don't know if that hurt them because, I mean, the Chiefs in their Super Bowl run that they won 2 years ago, they were down double digits in all 3 games. They came back from behind in all 3 playoff games that year. They also came from behind in the first 2 playoff games. I know it was the Steelers, they won big. They were down early, barely, but they were technically down against the Bills. They were technically down against the Steelers, and they were down late against Buffalo. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but Eli Apple shutting down Tyreek Hill was definitely huge. And Mahomes actually had, if he threw the ball really fast on that last play in that last drive, he did briefly have Travis Kelce and Byron Pringle open when he ran around and took that sack late. I don't fault him for taking that sack, though, just because I think Butker is actually oddly almost as accurate from 50 yards as he is from 20 yards. I mean, Harrison Butker is one of the most accurate field goal kickers in the league and one of the most inaccurate extra point kickers in the league. So I don't fault Mahomes at the end of the regulation trying to make a play. He just wasn't able to. But Joe Burrow trying to become the first number 1 overall pick that's won the national championship, the Heisman Trophy, and the Super Bowl. So he is looking to be an elite company. I think the only other 2 guys, number 1 picks that have won both were Joe Montana and Joe Namath, but neither of those guys won the Heisman. So hats off to the Bengals. As a Chief fan, I'm heartbroken. It was hard to watch. Mahomes had 1 pick in 8 career home playoff games. Well, he doubled up in this game. The last interception wasn't his fault. It was actually Tyreek Hill dropping a catch that I know it was a crazy catch, but that's one that he makes more than half the time. And that was indicative of the Chiefs just being off their game. I will say Mahomes probably should have thrown a pick six earlier in the drive, so it did even out. But that last pick was kind of more of a punt. That was actually a smart decision. Tyreek Hill just dropped the ball. Mahomes stuck it in between two guys, and Hill made an uncharacteristic play, gets tipped up, and the Bengals win. But a lot of credit to the Bengals. Those guys never gave up. They trailed against the best team in football, quite frankly, if you look at the last 3 years. So hats off to the Bengals. Definitely looking forward to see what they can do in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, defense wins championships. I think that's the name of the game here as we move on to the next one. The Rams
that hasn't been the case. That hasn't been the case in recent years. 2 years ago, the top four offenses in the league were in the conference championship, but maybe we're reverting back to some defense at least.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The Bengals played great defense towards in the second half of that game. They made major adjustments at halftime, and that's what won them it. But switching to the NFC game, the Rams pull off this 20-17 win over the 49ers. 13 points in the fourth quarter. Common, what'd you think?
Yeah, another double-digit comeback. It was 17-7 after three quarters. This one was a little bit different, though. This was actually a case of the Rams. They were kind of in control. They actually had a drive in the first half where Cooper Kupp dropped the slant that would have been a touchdown. Then some young receiver dropped a wide-open touchdown in the end zone. Rams were outgaining the Niners just about the whole game. The big difference in the fourth quarter was that they actually finished drives. Earlier in the game, they were failing to finish drives. San Fran got stuffed, only 50 rushing yards. A great rushing offense that had, quite frankly, ran all over the Rams in the last 3 years in a row. Speaking of adjustments, the Rams clearly made them, stopping the San Fran running game. And one of San Francisco's touchdowns was a screen pass where Deebo Samuel just went wild. So pretty much San Francisco couldn't get anything going offensively. Rams weren't finishing drives. And in the fourth quarter, Matthew Stafford played way better than Jimmy Garoppolo. Odell Beckham Jr. was a huge difference maker. If it wasn't for Odell Beckham Jr., they don't win this game. They don't make the Super Bowl. So hats off to Rams management for pulling the trigger, getting Odell. Him and Cooper Kupp are probably the best 1-2 duo in the NFL right now. I mean, I think Odell Beckham Jr. has gotten better and better and better as the season has gone along. And right now, I don't think there's a better number two receiver than him. And Cooper Kupp set all sorts of records as the number one. So a lot of credit has to go to the Rams. Sean McVay finally beat his former coaching mate, Kyle Shanahan. They were assistants together in Washington. So great comeback for the Rams. They did deserve to win the game, though. I thought the Chiefs won. I mean, obviously the Chiefs didn't deserve to win the game because they choked, but the Chiefs were clearly the better team in the first half, and they just did not play well in the second half. The Rams were clearly the better team the whole game. I think the Niners had a brief run there in the third quarter, but really, really good performance from the Rams. 20-17 win. Matthew Stafford killing it. Every playoff game put up big numbers, over 300 yards back-to-back weeks. Finally threw his first playoff interception this season, but he was the man. They made that move for him over Jared Goff, and it worked. Hats off to the Rams on a big win.
Absolutely. I mean, it was kind of interesting that this game, in comparison to the most recent couple weeks of football, was comparatively a snooze fest. This game, with the outcome decided with 90 seconds left in the game, it's the first game since the wild card round that didn't actually end on the last play of the game, which is just mind-blowing to think about how just spoiled we are with how compelling the football has been this entire postseason. Yeah, I mean, like how many highlighted it's stuffing the rushing attack on San Francisco's end. Deebo Samuel, 26 yards rushing. Elijah Mitchell, the rookie who's been pretty strong all season long, 20 yards rushing. And forcing toward the end of the game, making Jimmy Garoppolo have to throw the ball. And sure enough, something that's become unfortunately characteristic in his career, he makes the one big mistake, something Stafford has certainly received knocks for as well. But not putting the ball in the right place for an open receiver, it gets tipped up. interception end of game. So really interesting to see what happens with him and his career going forward when you consider I think they traded 3 first-round draft picks to make sure that the 49ers did that they could get Trey Lance. So Jimmy Garoppolo, where is he going to end up going? But for now, it's all about LA. Second year in a row that the host city for a Super Bowl is actually going to have their own home team being there with the Rams. So I know it's not quite the same home field advantage that Tampa Bay would at least nominally have with their game last year. I know with COVID restrictions, they didn't have a full stadium. But it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out next week as we break that down.
Yeah, I mean, congrats to the Rams for making it to the Super Bowl. It'll be interesting. 4.5-point favorites. That line just keeps going up.
Mm-hmm.
And since you guys, neither of you tooted your horns, I will toot the horns for you. Both of you guys had the Rams winning it all since the season started. So good job, gentlemen. I like to toot other horns, not just my own. So hats off to Drew Brackett and Tom Castleman.
Well, they haven't done it yet
with their Rams predictions. Yeah, but they made the Super Bowl, so you guys are closer than anyone else had. And Drew, of course, did
the
have the
Bengals deep,
making the playoffs before the season started. So there's something about Drew Brackett and his picks lately. He had the Bucks all the way last year in basketball. Drew Brackett misses some shows. Probably talks the least during the show, but man, he is sneaky good with those picks. Look out for Drew Brackett. He's sneaking in some excellent predictions, Mr. Brackett. So hats off to you. We won't get into that game. I know you guys will both pick the Rams. My first gut instinct is to say Bengals cover, Rams win. That might be a good hedge your bet situation, by the way, with that 4.5 line. Throw the money down on the Rams money line and the Bengals covering. But we'll get into that next week. No need to get too far into it. We won't spoil it for our listeners and viewers. We'll get into that game next week. Drew, we do have a lot more NFL to talk about, though. Several huge storylines literally in the last few hours.
Well, we'll go first with Tom Brady. The GOAT announced his retirement today. It was reported over the weekend by Adam Schefter. Of course, he was right. But yeah, Brady retires. Obviously, a salute to him, and just what he did. The stats are just incredible. I mean, the guy, with the amount of Super Bowls he's won, he holds basically every passing record, and just hats off to him.
Yeah, Tom Brady, a legendary career. He's number one in career pass yards in the regular and postseason, career touchdowns, most wins, most Super Bowl wins. I mean, incredible longevity. I know the thing that I hear people say, break his career into 3 segments. He would have 3 Hall of Fame careers. His original run with the Patriots, then his second run with the Patriots, and then his brief but very successful run with the Buccaneers. I mean, hats off to Brady. He's done a lot of great things. I knew he was going to retire, by the way, but he has to get his attention. He wants to draw it out as much as he can, which he did. But I'll say this. You guys know I think Tom Brady is one of the greatest athletes of all time, but I also think he is the luckiest athlete of all time. And while every other show and network in the country is going to heap all praise on Brady, I do have some interesting statistics for you guys and for the listeners. So let this be the one show where we are not just loving Brady, but we're also transparent. So Tom Brady, guys, is 17th all-time in career playoff passer rating. 17th all-time in the playoff passer rating. He can do no wrong in the playoffs, apparently. These are some incredible statistics here that I'm about to list off because it shows you how fortunate he's been. And that's what separates Brady from Manning, Rodgers, Mahomes, a lot of these other great players. They got to play lights out for their team to win. But Brady's had incredible coaches and incredible defenses where he hasn't had to play lights out. They've still won. He's 5-1 in the playoffs when throwing under 200 pass yards. 5-1. 3-1. 3-1 when he has 3 interceptions or more in the playoffs. 7-4 when he has 2 interceptions or more in the playoffs. So Tom Brady, legendary career, but certainly the most fortunate career in the history of sports. The crazy thing is, guys, if Drew Bledsoe hadn't gotten hurt, we may never know who Tom Brady is because Bledsoe had just signed like a 10-year deal with the Patriots back then and was a Pro Bowl quarterback, a guy that already took the team to the Super Bowl. They didn't win with him, but he took him there, and Brady was a 6th-round pick. So it's possible if Drew Bledsoe stays healthy, we don't even know who Brady is. So his fortune started with Bledsoe's injury. Then it kept going with the tuck rule. Are you kidding me? The tuck rule against the Raiders. He was going to be out early in the playoffs. Then he got hurt in the AFC title game, and Bledsoe helped lead him back. And everyone's like, oh, Bledsoe will start the Super Bowl. But Brady gets the nod. Belichick had 2 times where after Bledsoe came back in the regular season, there was about 2/3 of people thought that he should go back to Bledsoe. He stuck with Brady. Then after the AFC title game, they said, why don't you go with Bledsoe in the Super Bowl? He went with Brady. Brady had only 145 pass yards, but it was enough to get the Super Bowl win. So hats off to Brady on a great career. I just want it to be known that he is human, and he's been very fortunate throughout his career. One of the all-time great athletes, but I say this, the luckiest athlete in the history of not only the NFL, but professional sports. He was lucky, but better be lucky than good, they say, right?
Well, yeah. Also, Tom, I'll let you talk in a moment, but
take it.
Just some of the stats from Mr. Brady in the postseason.
Sure,
he has 14 game-winning drives. That's first. 9 fourth-quarter comebacks. That's first. I mean, he's clutch. And then, of course, the regular season accolades. He's first all-time in wins, Pro Bowls, Super Bowl MVPs. Starts, completions, attempts, pass yards, passing touchdowns, 3 touchdown games, 4 touchdown games, and then, of course, some other stats that probably will never be broken. 35 postseason wins, 7 Super Bowl titles, never going to be broken. I don't care about, Mr. Mahomes or Joe Burrow, whatever. I mean,
Mahomes will definitely pass him in wins. I don't know about rings, but Mahomes will definitely pass him in playoff wins. And I'll tell you one other stat that I forgot to mention. Tom Brady, less yards per game and less touchdowns per game than Peyton Manning and Drew Brees, 2 quarterbacks in his own era.
Yards don't matter.
Yeah, they matter. They do matter.
They don't. Yards is a lucky stat because if you have a good defense, you only have to drive 50 yards down the field per drive.
I'm just telling you, in his own era, he wasn't the leader in pass yards or touchdowns. That was Manning and Brees. In terms of per game basis,
in pass yards this last season.
We're right this last season, yeah. And that's what's crazy. Tom Brady played some of his best football at the end of his career and didn't win. That was what was wild. He did play extra games this season. And it was a different offense in Tampa. But, yeah, I mean, he was a great player, guys. I'm not trying to say that he wasn't great, but people have him, like, so much higher than everyone else. And I've got him in, like, Manning and Brees up there. I got Mahomes higher, obviously, for talent. I just want it to be known that Brady has been very, very fortunate because a lot of the stuff he's done, a lot of these other guys can do that. I mean, if Manning was with Belichick, he would have 7 rings as well. I'll tell you that much. With Belichick and that defense, Peyton Manning would have himself 7 rings as well. You better believe it.
You call me when Patrick Mahomes has 7 Super Bowl rings.
I will. We'll talk in 15 years.
It's just not going to happen.
We'll be talking in 15 years. 15 years from now, I'll be calling you. We'll be talking.
I mean, I realize that there is some there is some contradictory nature to football being the ultimate team sport.
It is.
And then within that, talking about the greatest, Tom Brady being the greatest of all time. And I mean, everybody's within that sport. So I think that it's fair to label him with that. But consider the default position at the end of a season for most teams, all except one team, is losing. Only one team wins every single year. He's managed to do it 7 times in 22 seasons. He's ended his season in the Super Bowl 10 out of 22 times. I believe one of those times was a year where he had the ACL injury. So it's like 45, almost 50% of his career he's ending in the very last game that anybody can ever play. I mean, you can't just solely attribute that to like good fortune, to luck, what have
Oh
you.
no,
I mean, like he
he's
definitely
part of
plays
it
like
for
a
sure.
massive role. So like
Sure.
I think like yes, like the stats are wonderful and everything like that, but greatness kind of transcends a little bit of what is tangible on paper in a box score. It is just the overall aura of the player, and the fact that he was able to do that where other quarterbacks who have played with great teams on great coaches. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger is a great example. He's had very consistent, very good coaching throughout his career. He's played on plenty of good defenses, and he's come away with 2 Super Bowls, for example. So, like, winning is incredibly difficult. And I know, like, there's no tangible thing behind winning, but I think that's definitely a massive thing that plays into his mystique, to his, just goatness overall. That can't, sure, there's luck contributed all around to that sort of thing. But I think putting more of an emphasis on luck takes away a little bit from the actual accomplishment he's been able to do. Going from a 6th-round pick to a 44-year-old man who played 22 years in the league and retired, argue like as a contender for the MVP award.
Well, and he'll probably win the MVP award, but I'll tell you this, that is probably why he might get a very slight edge to me as the GOAT right now over a Manning and Breeze, for example. I don't think at his best he's better than those guys, but he played longer at a high level. That is why, like, for example, I think Michael Jordan at his best might be the best player of all time, but when we're talking about GOAT, LeBron has to get some longevity points. So Tom Brady gets tons of longevity points for me. I mean, Peyton Manning at 38 or 39, whatever, when he last played, had completely lost it. Brady in his mid-40s, rather, had not lost it. So Brady, as far as a whole career, I can get around labeling him as the GOAT, but it's just like so close. And when you hear GOAT discussions in other sports, there's not one GOAT. In football, he's considered the universal GOAT. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of guys who are just as good as him. And I think Patrick Mahomes is definitely better without question. I mean, Mahomes is like Michael Jordan. Brady, to me, is like, Magic Johnson before MJ got the rings. I don't think that 7 rings alone is everything to say he's the GOAT. I mean, I think he gets a lot of credit for those, and that is what does push him over the top. But I mean, if Patrick Mahomes retires with 5 rings and has significantly better statistics, which he will, I don't have a problem giving the GOAT to Mahomes. I can understand the argument for Brady as the GOAT. I can actually maybe even lean towards it because of his sheer longevity. But I don't ever look at Tom Brady in any given season that he's ever played that I say he was clearly better than the next best guy. There are some seasons where he was the best and was deserving of the MVP, but it was always close. There are some seasons where Michael Jordan was clearly better than the rest. There's some seasons where Lionel Messi, my guy, clearly better than the rest. Roger Federer, clearly better than the rest, although Federer in his later career now will be 3rd all-time in majors. But of the GOATs in all sports, Tom Brady, I would say, is without question the least dominant. But he is considered arguably the most dominant because he has the most rings. But Tom, you said it. Football is the ultimate team sport. Mm-hmm. There's 22 guys on the field, not counting the special teams guys. So Brady and all his rings, I mean, you got to put it into perspective.
Well, he also played with 4 of the top 6 quarterbacks of all time.
He did.
That's why he's not winning MVP every year. They had the 3 best quarterbacks.
His first 3 Super Bowls, he was basically a game manager. I mean, he had 145 yards in the Super Bowl win against the Rams. He was really not doing much to win them playoff games the first 3 years. I mean, there's a lot of other quarterbacks that would have won it. I give him tons of credit for his last 4 Super Bowls, but he wasn't the reason they won the early Super Bowls. It was the defense that won the early Super Bowls. So if he was playing and winning Super Bowls like his last 4 his whole career, that might be different. But I just think that Patriots defense, I mean, look at Brady's numbers in the first 3 Super Bowl runs. They were not good. They were not good at all. And he is not the reason why they won the first 3 Super Bowls. It was that defense. There's a host of other quarterbacks that would have won with those numbers. So I give him credit for the aura. I give him credit for the mystique. And I give him credit for the rings. But I think he's just a little overhyped. and it's the Brady fans that drive me nuts, and this whole automatic GOAT label that drives me nuts, because I think there's a lot of guys who are on his level without question.
Well, as far as that goes, just to like put some stats into perspective here, Tom Brady is tied for the most 40-plus touchdown seasons of any quarterbacks. He's tied with Aaron Rodgers for 3 seasons in which he's thrown for 40 touchdowns or more. No other quarterback's done that. He's also first in number of 35-plus touchdown seasons. He and Aaron Rodgers both have 6 of those seasons. No other quarterbacks have more than that. So I think that we're kind of brushing over those numbers and saying like he's not, dominant. He's not comparable to like Manning or Breeze. Or
he is comparable. He's comparable, absolutely.
Well, but I'm saying
he's just not far better.
But they haven't done that sort of thing, though. And one thing that
they played more seasons. Jordan didn't score as many points as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Well, yeah, he didn't play as many seasons.
I'm looking at that like he's played more seasons. Sure, he also has 203 interceptions to Breeze's 243. And let me look at that's Eli's interceptions. Peyton Manning like had way more interceptions than Tom Brady. So like even like. Yes, he's played more seasons. He's also thrown for fewer interceptions than both of those guys by a significant margin. So, like, I get like an argument can technically be made, but I think it is pretty clear that he is the greatest quarterback of all time and why he's the greatest quarterback.
And I have a better time going with that argument than the rings argument, because I think the teams that he's played on have been so good. I mean, Matt Castle, a horrendous quarterback, one of the worst quarterbacks in the history of the National Football League, had the Patriots at 10-6. Like Jimmy Garoppolo barely lost a game when he was the Patriots quarterback when Brady was sitting because of Deflategate. So, I mean, Mac Jones almost had him making a run in the playoffs this season, and he was a rookie quarterback that wasn't very good. There are small lines in the NFL, and I just think he's played on incredible teams. That is the argument, by the way, Tom. If you're going to convince me, and that is true, Brady did have less interceptions than those guys. That is the argument that people should use. All I'm trying to say is that the dude is not invincible in the playoffs. Because, I mean, he is 17th all-time in playoff passer rating, which accounts for touchdowns, interceptions, etc. That is better than Peyton Manning, but it is worse than Drew Brees and obviously worse than 16 other guys. So, yes, I'm probably stretching things a little bit, but I just want people to know that this man was not superhuman. And what bothers me more than anything is that, people act as if Brady's superhuman. And I think he has just been very, very fortunate. I'm going to pull up this game log if my computer will load.
And because he played until he was 45 or whatever. I don't think that's going to happen again with a quarterback.
Oh, I disagree. I think with the modern medicine and the way they're taking care of guys and athleticism, it's going to happen a lot more. But I'm just going to read this off real fast, guys. This will be my last thing that I'll say. But in Brady's first Super Bowl run, his first playoff game,
which was 20 years ago.
Yes, but if you're going to talk about 7 rings, you can listen to me telling you that half of those rings he was not the star on the team. So this is what I'm trying to tell you: 312 pass yards and an interception, no touchdowns against the Raiders. That was an overtime game, I believe. Actually, it wasn't an overtime game, looks like. But no touchdowns. Next game, 115 yards, no picks, no touchdowns against the Steelers. And then he had 145 yards, 1 touchdown, no pick. The Patriots in those 3 playoff games scored 16, 24, and 20 points. In those 3 playoff games, he averaged under 200 pass yards, had 1 touchdown, 1 pick in the first Super Bowl run. Second Super Bowl run, 144 yards and a touchdown, first playoff game. Then he had 207 and 2 touchdowns, then 236 and 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl. So he was not mind-blowing in any of those early Super Bowl runs for the Patriots. And then you look at the third Super Bowl run in the second round against the Chargers. He had 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 picks in the Super Bowl. And he lost that Super Bowl actually against the Giants. But that's what I'm saying, though. You look at these numbers in some of those early Super Bowls, Tom Brady was pretty human. I hate to say it, guys, pretty human. Second Super Bowl run, 207, 237 pass yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 201 pass yards, 1 touchdown in the early playoff games. Then in that Super Bowl, 354, 3 touchdowns and a pick. He was great in that Super Bowl. But essentially in his first 3 Super Bowl wins, he had over 300 pass yards, I believe, once or twice. And he had 1 game where he had more than 2 touchdown passes. So just something to think about that doesn't get talked about ever in Tom Brady's run. I equate it to Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant, in his first 3 rings, Shaq was the MVP. And even though you can argue that Brady was the MVP, I would give the MVP to that entire Patriots defense and Bill Belichick for the first 3 Super Bowl rings. So if we're going to give credit for Tom Brady for 7 rings, we got to give credit for 4 of them being him being the guy. The first 3, he was not the guy. He was their part of the team. Just like Peyton Manning was their part of the team in his last Super Bowl win with the Broncos, just like Ben Roethlisberger was their part of the team in Pittsburgh's first win. So I give Brady a lot of credit for 4 rings, not that much credit for the other 3. That's all I'm saying.
Counterpoint is if you look at Patrick Mahomes and his Super Bowl win, he didn't play great at all on
But he
paper.
played great in the playoffs, though. They wouldn't have gotten there without him.
You were talking Super Bowl.
Well, he played solid in the Super Bowl. Not amazing, but
286 pass yards, 2 tutties, 2 picks, 78 passer rating.
Sure, Patrick Mahomes is number 2 career playoff passer rating, though, behind Josh Allen, who's number 1 with the limited sample size. So Mahomes led the Chiefs in a lot of those playoff runs. He was not as great in the Super Bowl, but we're talking about 2 games there with Mahomes, which is I'm talking about Brady's entire playoff run, a bigger sample size. So just something to think about. Tom Brady was not the stud in those early Super Bowl runs for the Patriots. He had like 1 great game against the Panthers in the Super Bowl. In their first 3 Super Bowl wins, he had 1 great game. A few good games, but only 1 great game in the first 3 Super Bowl run. So something to think about. Just saying.
Fair enough.
The GOAT, though, I'll give him like the slightest of GOAT edges because of longevity. Not because of rings, because of longevity and not throwing picks. But Patrick Mahomes is going to be definitely higher for me, even if he doesn't get the 7 rings. Without question, Mahomes will pass him.
All right. Switching over to the hardwood NBA All-Star starters.
Let's get on this Brian Flores thing real quickly. I think it's a pretty big story. Ahead. I don't want to ignore it. So Brian Flores has filed the suit against the National Football League, suing 3 teams alleging racism in the hiring process. The more recent thing stemmed from, ironically, Bill Belichick supposedly sending a message to the other Brian, who's now the Bills coach, who was the Bills OC. He's now the Giants coach. Let me pull this up here in the article. So alleges he received a series of text messages from Patriots coach Bill Belichick, under whom Flores worked for 10 years in New England. In those texts, Belichick told Flores that he had heard from Buffalo and New York Giants, "You are the guy." Flores then asked Belichick to clarify what he meant to him. And he's or former Bills offensive coordinator Brian Daboll. "Sorry, I effed up. I double-checked and misread the text. I think they're naming Brian Daboll. I'm sorry about that," Belichick texted. And that is before he went in and did an interview. So those messages had come in before his interview, and the claim is that the Giants interviewed him just because of the Rooney Rule, where you're required to interview African-American coaches. So they went in interviewing him when they knew there was no way they're going to hire him just to use the rule. And he claimed a similar situation with also the same thing happening when he got interviewed for a Broncos job a few years ago, saying that John Elway and other executives showed up drunk to the interview, basically said he was forced out of Miami as well. So there seems to be some truth to that, though, because if Belichick sent them those messages on accident, Belichick knows. Belichick knew that Brian Daboll was going to get hired as the coach, and they were going to hire Brian Daboll, but they still felt the need to bring in Brian Flores. They were using the Rooney Rule, so I think there might be some truth to what he's saying here. Obviously, there's only one African-American head coach in the National Football League right now. That's Mike Tomlin, and he's more than earned that position. Mike Tomlin, without question, a top 5 coach in the league, never had a losing season. So this was very interesting because Brian Flores is going to get blacklisted. He's not going to get a head coaching job now, but it seems like he doesn't care because he's out to prove a point. And I think he is kind of proving his point. But fair or not, the sad thing is that nothing's going to be done. Nothing will be done about this because there's only 6 general managers that are African-American, I believe. Very few, if any, owners. And the guys are none. The guys are not going to hire African-American guys. He could be the next Colin Kaepernick. They're going to hire them if they're hands down the best coach. But if you're even or a little bit better, you're going to get overlooked. I mean, Mike Tomlin will get hired because he's the best man for the job. Brian Flores, like, maybe the best man for the job. But if he's not significantly higher than someone else, he is not going to be getting hired. And because of this, he'll probably never get a head coaching job again in the National Football League now. Maybe coach college football.
I mean, I'm a little bit more optimistic about what fruit this lawsuit can bear simply because it is so public and it's at a point in time where, it's February 1st, Black History Month. I mean, people are more aware, I think, of these inequities in the hiring process. And in part, it's because it's reinforced over and over and over and over and over again. Where how many years of experience did Matt Nagy have calling plays in Kansas City when the Bears hired him to be a head coach? And yet Eric Bieniemy, as an offensive coordinator for Kansas City, is still getting a couple of interviews, but not really anything serious. And I think that this also kind of goes to highlight a little bit of the reporting that goes on with these coaching positions. Because remember, we did touch on this topic shortly or the day after, like a bunch of coaches were fired. I think Brian Flores was actually fired the day that we were recording the show. And we talked about like, okay, why could this happen? Because he's been a successful head coach as far as getting results on the field with wins. And I think the only thing that we really saw as far as reports go, and I'm not going to name names, but the 4-letter network certainly has a very prominent reporter who is breaking news saying that it's because he doesn't get along well with the front office. He's not getting along. He's not a great relationship person. And we just kind of took that at face value, and seemingly so did the reporter. And yet we're seeing in this lawsuit that the team owner allegedly is offering him $100,000 per loss in the 2019 season, being upset that they're winning because that's hurting draft position, trying to get him to violate the tampering rules by getting in contact with Deshaun Watson. The team owner allegedly, again, going so far as to set up a point in time where Brian Flores and Deshaun Watson would be in the same vicinity. I think it was like on a yacht or something like that.
Yes.
And Flores immediately just leaving because he said, I'm not going to be breaking these rules. I'm not going to be tampering for you. And we're kind of finding out, again, these are all allegations on the part of the plaintiff. But if this is what's behind the interpersonal issues, the strife between head coach and front office and ownership, it's
not
very,
Flores'
very,
fault.
it's
the
very
owner.
damning. Exactly. This is damning stuff. And so I think I hold a lot more optimism that something good will come of this. Unlike Colin Kaepernick, you don't have perishable skills as a head coach as far as that goes. You don't, it doesn't matter if you get slower, you can't throw the ball as far or as hard. I think that, he's gotten results both as a defensive coordinator for Bill Belichick as well as a head coach. So he definitely can be the answer to some coaching positions. It's just a matter of once this is resolved, what avenues does he have back into the NFL? And as far as if we want to put on our tinfoil hats a little bit, New York media posting about, Tom Brady, loser of 2 Super Bowls, is retiring. Wonder if Bill Belichick is saying, hey, this is an opportunity for me to throw a little dirt on the New York Giants, somebody that, kind of been bugging me a little bit throughout my career. I know it's petty as all get out and is most likely not the reason that this came out.
He was a Super Bowl champ with the Giants when he was a D coordinator, but they didn't look at him for a head coaching job too.
They're just like, oops, I texted the wrong Brian. It's all tinfoil hat stuff, but interesting to think about.
He didn't text the wrong Brian. This is Bill Belichick trying to get every other team in trouble. I mean, what do you think? The Dolphins are in that division. What do you think? The Giants, a team that slaughtered them. Bill Belichick wants to create chaos among the NFL. Oops, I texted the wrong Brian. As if, Bill. As if.
So you're wearing the same hat I am.
Yes, I am.
Drew, are we getting a tinfoil hat fitted in your size as well?
Sure, absolutely. Throw it on.
All right. Anything you want to add to this, Drew? I know you're not willing to stir the pot as much as Tom and I.
Nah, I'm good.
Drew's not a pot stirrer. I'm a pot stirrer personally. I like to stir up the pot and get it out there.
I make my picks in silence.
And they work.
Of course. All right, we'll move on to the NBA All-Star starters announced last week. Common, why don't you go through them?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the starters, then we'll get into like snubs and who deserved to get it, who didn't. So first off, the East, we've got Kevin Durant, the leading vote getter, leading the league in scoring. Giannis Antetokounmpo, two-time MVP, Finals MVP from last year. Joel Embiid, tied for second in the league in scoring. He was an NBA MVP candidate last year, maybe the front runner this year. We'll get into that in a little bit. Trae Young, DeMar DeRozan also. DeMar DeRozan, our Chicago Bull buzzer beater guy. So the Eastern Conference guys, there really are no snubs because you look at these guys, Durant, Giannis, Embiid, Trae Young, and DeMar DeRozan. Those are actually the 5 leading scorers in the Eastern Conference and 5 of the 6 leading guys in the league, with LeBron out west being tied for second. So I don't have any strife with the East. The West is where it gets really interesting. I think LeBron James was obviously the fan vote. LeBron should be starting in the All-Star game. He is second in the league in scoring, despite, what is he now, 39, Tom? 38?
I think he's only 37. Only 37.
Only 37. Okay, well, there you go. So LeBron deserves it. Nikola Jokic, the defending MVP, is probably having an even better season this year. Just his team hasn't gotten the wins. He deserves to be in. Stephen Curry, I mean, he's a little bit of a shooting slump, but it's Stephen freaking Curry. The Warriors are dominating. Curry deserves to start. The one that doesn't deserve to start is Andrew Wiggins, his teammate. I don't know how he got voted in. I do think Wiggins deserves to be in the All-Star game, but not as a starter. He's the obvious guy, averaging 18 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists. I mean, his own teammate, Draymond Green, right behind him in the voting, is more valuable. Rudy Gobert, leading the league with 15 rebounds a game, 2.5 blocks almost, second in the league. Karl Anthony Towns, also 24.4, 9.4 rebounds. I think certainly better than Mr. Wiggins in the front court. But the one that's really interesting is I look at the guard position in the West, because I think there's literally about 5 or 6 guys who probably deserve that last starting spot. And you can actually argue that they can deserve it over Curry even. But I'm putting Steph in because it's Steph. But I mean, Ja Morant, all-star starter. That was interesting. 26.4 points for him. You have Luka at 25.6, but Luka is getting more assists. Luka's getting more rebounds. He is doing more overall than Ja. And then you have Devin Booker at 25.1 points per game. He plays on the top team in the league. And let's not forget about Chris Paul. Maybe this is why Booker didn't get in, because there's Chris Paul, his own teammate, leading the league in assists. So all those guys actually deserve that starting spot. Maybe Ja getting it makes sense because he's the most athletic. He can do the most in an all-star game setting. But personally, I would probably lean Luka as the starter, but I'm not terribly upset with Ja Morant getting that starting spot. But that guard position, Ja Morant, Stephen Curry, Luka Doncic, Devin Booker, Chris Paul. I mean, all those guys are like this close. They've all had roughly even seasons to me right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty easy Luka Doncic over Andrew Wiggins. I don't know if there's many, if any, metrics whatsoever that indicate that Wiggins is having a better...
a guard, though, I think. That's how, you would be putting in an extra guard, I think. Because, That's where
he's about the same size as Andrew Wiggins. Like, is it because they like force you to pick by position and not just here are the
sure.
best players?
Well, they do it based on the voting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they did it by voting, and it's front court and backcourt players. So I agree with you. Luka obviously over Andrew Wiggins makes sense, but they considered Luka a backcourt player and Wiggins a front court player. So the next guys closest in the vote would have been Draymond Green, Rudy Gobert. Luka was like the next closest for the guards. So, but I agree with you. That would make the most sense.
That
would make the most sense.
Like I'm looking up at the numbers now. Like he has more rebounds per game. Like, okay, whatever, NBA.
Didn't Andrew Wiggins get voted in by some because of some push by some music band or something to vote him in or something, Drew?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't even. I don't know anything. No idea.
I'm gonna look this up right now. I'm gonna look it up, but you guys go ahead. I mean, what did you guys think of the All-Star starters overall, though? I think it's pretty cool because DeMar DeRozan getting it after he was called by many as the worst signing in the offseason. And he's had a rejuvenary season. I mean, he wasn't that great in San Antonio. He's back to his Raptor days, if not better, with the Bulls. DeMar DeRozan, talk about clutch, hit 2-game winners in back-to-back games, and he's, I think, leading the league in fourth quarter scoring. So I thought DeMar DeRozan was a neat story. I think Ja Morant making it is a neat story. And then mostly the rest is the same old faces that we expect. But I think for those guys, it was pretty cool.
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead, Drew.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I agree. Luka left out of the starters. That's all right. He'll get in.
Of course, yeah. And like I'm looking, let's see, what do we have for the other votes? I mean, yeah, I guess it's just kind of like a weak year for the front court as far as they're designating these vote getters. I mean, this has always been a part of the NBA All-Star voting, where Tim Duncan is famous for emphasizing he is a power forward because there was no way he was going to beat Shaquille O'Neal to start at center, even though that's more traditionally the position that he played. I mean, I would say like Karl Anthony Towns has been doing a lot for a really good Minnesota team, or at least a better than
solid, not really good.
Well, in comparison to where they typically are, a good Minnesota team. I mean, yeah, sure, I guess. Like, yeah, I'm looking at the front court in the Western Conference, and it isn't all that deep. I think it's just, I think they're just kind of mislabeling Luka Doncic and what he does, what he brings to the table. As far,
Okay, so here's what I'm going to read to you here.
You got
I was right. Okay, so Andrew Wiggins definitely isn't one of the 5 best players in the Western Conference this season. His success was pushed largely by his 3.45 million fan votes, which represent half of the selection criteria. Controversially, some of that fan vote was influenced by Warriors global ambassador and K-pop star Bam Bam. I don't even know who Bam Bam is. Bam Bam tweeting in support of Wiggins. Each tweet and retweet is counted as a vote, and Bam Bam was retweeted 38,000 times. Now, Bam Bam and his army of K-pop fans are being widely mocked by the NBA fans and delegitimized by some of the media for getting Wiggins into the game. But Bam Bam pushed Wiggins late in the vote, right before the fan vote was going to run over, and Bam Bam got Wiggins in.
I sometimes dislike the world in which we live.
Look at that look on Tom's face. That says it all.
Tom, you're not a Bam Bam music goer?
I am not aware of this individual,
do you know who
this
Bam
entertainer.
Bam is, Drew? I've never heard of this person until now.
No, I thought it was Bam Bam from the Flintstones, right?
No, Bam K-pop, apparently.
I'm going to go like all old man meet front lawn. I remember the days where you had to actually fill out a ballot. You had to go to a specific site to fill out a ballot of who you want. And you could vote as much as you wanted to, but you had to actually go to NBA.com or sometimes like as it's developed, teams would be, would put up ballots and that sort of thing. To have votes counted through retweets, what? Like,
I mostly agree. I'm just here for your reaction, Tom. I'm here for the reaction. I'm here for Bam Bam.
Can we get the RNC to help out with the NBA and look for some like legitimate voter fraud type of thing? Like,
there's your real voter fraud, NBA All-Star votes.
Yeah, let's tighten up those voting restrictions a little bit.
Maybe there was burner accounts being created so they can retweet Bam Bam. Probably burner accounts going on here.
Or bot accounts that just automatically are put in place to boost and promote whatever a particular influencer says or does. Like, yeah, this is definitely an illegitimate process. And I think that there should be Supreme Court cases filed over this.
Supreme Court cases? We're going to the Supreme Court. Let's go. I love it. I love it. Drew's probably looking into this. Who's Bam Bam? I don't even know who Bam Bam is.
I mean, I type in Bam Bam and the Flintstones comes up, so I don't know.
This is where we all have the uncomfortable conversation about how we're getting old.
Yes, we are. That's a good point. We're getting old, and I'm the oldest of the bunch, Tom. The old guy over here, Kamenechev, geezer. 31 years old. Drew, you're still 30, aren't you? And Tom is 29?
Yeah, I'm 30.
No, I'm 30.
No, you turned 30, Tom? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. Well, Bam Bam has upset Tom Castleman. Way to go, Bam Bam.
Way to go, Bam Bam. Hashtag Bam Bam.
I guess move on to what, our mid-season picks, or what do we got?
Yeah, mid-season picks. Real quickly, before we move on to that, the All-Star reserves are slotted to be announced later this week. So we'll find out who the reserves are. But yeah, let's move on to our mid-season things, Drew Brackett.
Yeah, what do you got? Mid-season NBA Finals pick and winner. Who you got, Common?
Well, before we get into that, we had one other mid-season thing.
MVP.
Oh, MVP.
Yeah, I'm going with Nikola Jokic on this one. Common, you referenced him earlier having perhaps a better season than he did last year when he actually won the MVP. I understand that there are different politics that stand in his way. Voters are reticent to hand out back-to-back MVP awards. Voters are also reticent to hand out MVP awards to players who aren't on the top 2, 3, maybe 4 teams. Currently, the Nuggets sit 5th overall, but I think that in and of itself actually bolsters the case for Nikola Jokic. I'll run through the numbers for you guys. He is 9th in points per game, 2nd in rebounds per game, 8th in assists per game. All of this from the center position. He is number 1 in the NBA in player efficiency rating. Has the Nuggets at 5th in the Western Conference despite no Jamal Murray all season long and no Michael Porter Jr. from, I think, December is when he went out with that back injury.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough to win back-to-back MVPs when you're a middling team in your conference. But, I mean, he's as qualified a player to overcome those obstacles as any, if not in recent memory, perhaps ever. For the MVP award this year. So that he's the one who's getting it for me. We'll see how things end up when we reach season's end.
Yeah, for me, I think there's no clear frontrunner. I think this is one of the closest races, perhaps at the midpoint mark in the history of the Basketball Association. I think there's not one guy that stands out right now. So I don't necessarily have a problem with any of them getting picked. I mean, here's the deal. Curry's doing incredible things. He was at one point the favorite, but he's currently in a shooting slump. He's still not top 5 in the league in scoring, but Curry's in the conversation. Kevin Durant is leading the league in scoring, but he's missed a lot of games, and he's going to miss some more because of injury. Giannis is up there as usual, but he's 4th in points this year, so not leading the league in scoring. The Bucks aren't even the top seed in the East. You're talking about that, Tom. We have DeMar DeRozan for the Bulls, a sleeper pick with all those game winners. He's 6th in the league in scoring, but then you have Zach LaVine, his own teammate, not far behind him. We've got Devin Booker, top record in the league with the Suns, but he's only 13th in scoring. Chris Paul, 1st in assists, also on his team. Those guys almost cancel each other out. Jokic, as you mentioned, Tom, His team is lower in the standings. He did win the MVP last season. That's going to hurt him. And then I look at a sleeper pick for me that no one's talking about. You know what I'm going to go with? LeBron James. LeBron James is tied for second in the league in scoring. Are you kidding me? He's shooting over 50%. He's still getting a bunch of rebounds and assists. Lakers are just not a good team. And I think they'd be much worse if it wasn't for him. It shows when he doesn't play. So LeBron has to be in the running for me. Probably the top three for me are LeBron, Jokic, and Embiid. Joel Embiid is probably the guy who's going to get it if he stays healthy. And that's a big emphasis on the if, because I don't think that's going to happen. We've yet to see him stay healthy for a whole season. But he's the guy. He's second in the league in player efficiency rating, second in the league with 21.1 points per game. He's getting double-digit rebounds as well. He's almost a 50-40-90 guy. Almost 50-40-90. He's a little bit lower than 40 from threes, but shooting well from three. Talk about a big man doing incredible things. He's the one doing it with this shooting. Sixers are only a half game back in the East. So I think Joel Embiid is probably the guy who's going to get it. But to me, I think Jokic and LeBron are just as deserving, if not more so, for that MVP. What do you think, Drew?
Oh, you got to give it to Embiid. He's having a terrific season, second in the league in scoring. And as you mentioned, he's almost part of that 50-40-90 club. And, you know, the 76ers, last time I checked, were doing quite well this season as I pull up the standings.
Half a game back of first.
Yeah,
Tobias Harris is their second best player.
Sure,
so that's something to think about. I mean, that's the argument that you can make for Jokic. I don't even know who the Nuggets' second best player is. Probably Aaron Gordon right now with all the injuries, who's a dunker primarily. And the second best player on the Sixers is Tobias Harris. I mean, Seth Curry's like third or fourth on the team in scoring, Steph's brother. That's
crazy.
Both of those guys are good picks. I don't have a problem with either.
No one went DeMar DeRozan, though.
I like DeMar. DeMar is top 5 MVP candidate for me. I think he's been great because of how clutch he's been in the fourth quarter. Still, though, like DeMar doesn't get the same amount of assists as Jokic does. Doesn't make the game as easy for his teammates as LeBron James does, or even as Joel Embiid does, because DeMar is fantastic, but he's a little bit more of a scorer. He's an improved passer, an improved defender, and he's very clutch. But for the MVP, like I look at like how much do you impact the whole team around you? And obviously DeMar makes the Bulls better, but he's more of that traditional scorer. DeMar DeRozan's like a Kobe Bryant, not as good, but similar to that type of player. And these days, a lot of the top MVP candidates are guys that can also kill you with the pass too, which is something that LeBron, Jokic, and Embiid is actually pretty underrated as a passer as well. So it'll be fun, though. I really think that the race is wide open. I don't think any one of those guys stands out. Embiid is, if he stays healthy, will probably get it because all those other guys have gotten an MVP before. Tom likes to talk about story and narrative. Well, there it is. Jokic won. Giannis has won recently. LeBron's won so many times. Durant has won. Curry's won. I mean, all those guys are going to win. That's why the MVP favorite 2 years ago and one of the favorites this season was Luka Doncic, because he hasn't gotten one. And by the way, he's not that far off himself, but his team's struggling a little bit more. So the narrative, anytime where it's close, tie goes to the guy who doesn't get it, who hasn't gotten it. I do think Jokic is probably a little bit better overall than Embiid because of his passing ability. But Embiid is, I think, the most likely to get it. And I won't be furious if he does, because I think all those guys are just this close. But this award can be won and lost. It's going to be one of those that goes down to the last week of the season, and health will matter. And if Embiid misses a stretch of games, which he has done in the past, he might not end up winning it. I mean, I definitely take the field over him for sure.
All right, we'll move on to our midseason NBA Finals pick and winner. Tom, what do you got?
Preseason, I had Nets over Nuggets given the injuries. I'm going to switch that to Nets over the Warriors. Nets, quite frankly, they're sixth in the East right now, but honestly, that might be where they want to be heading into the postseason, given that New York has state laws in place to prevent Kyrie Irving. Not him specifically. They didn't pass legislation just for him, but because of New York law, he is unable to play when they have games in Brooklyn. So sitting in that sixth seed is perfect because then the Nets will have road field advantage, road court advantage going into each of their series. They get Irving for 4 games instead of just 3. So, I mean, they're also just super talented with Harden and Durant and everyone else. They don't care about the regular season. It doesn't really matter. So long as they come the postseason, and I think they definitely will be able to do that. And then, the Warriors are another team where super talented. They just need to, manage their health, get to the postseason. They definitely are very capable of playing good defense. And they've got, of course, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, any number of guys who can hurt you by putting points up on the board. So they even have some redundancies in place in case somebody has an off night, somebody's injured, what have you. So those are the two teams that I'm going for as my midseason picks for the NBA Finals.
Did I have Nets Lakers or what did I have preseason, Tom? I probably
I
had
don't
Nets
know.
Lakers Nets winning.
I don't know that I have that down.
All right. Well, I'm going with Warriors over Nets. I'm going to flip the pick that you made. And I will say this. If the Nets are fully healthy, I think the Nets are going to win this whole thing. I think they're the most talented team. They're the best team. I mean, if you look at Durant, Kyrie, Irving, and James Harden, when they play together, their record is through the roof. They've played together less than 25 games since they've been together, which is crazy to think about. And that New York law that you mentioned, that'll be interesting to monitor because that could change come playoff time. We'll see if it does. It may not, but if, that's something to actually monitor, the COVID law and how it affects Kyrie Irving. That'll be an interesting thing to look at. I do think, though, the Nets' big three is so good. And even last year, they had Durant, and they pushed the Bucks to 7 games who won it all. If it wasn't for Durant's foot being on the line, the Nets would have won that game 7. I mean, Harden was hurt. Irving was hurt. I know Harden played through the injuries in those playoff games, but he was nowhere near his normal self. So if the Nets are healthy, you're not going to beat the Nets. But I'm going to bank on someone getting hurt at some point and them not being fully healthy in the finals because we've seen this story with them the last couple of years. They haven't been able to consistently be on the court, whether it's personal reasons, whether it's unvaccination, whether it's being healthy. And I do think Kyrie missing some games could hurt them. I think in the games he doesn't play, they're going to be in worse position because they don't have a lot of depth. Their depth is not great. The Warriors have a ton more depth. And that is why I like the Warriors in that matchup. They've got a way better bench. They've got proven winners. They've got a proven head coach in Steve Kerr, which Steve Nash, quite frankly, is not. They've got Curry, Thompson, Jordan Poole, Draymond Green. I mean, Andre Iguodala is an underrated piece, a former leader on the NBA Finals team. I mean, there was a crazy statistic where Iguodala was in so many finals in a row. One of the most underrated players in NBA history, but ironically got that MVP that maybe he didn't deserve in the finals. Steph Curry probably deserved that one. I know Iguodala got a lot of credit for defense, but LeBron still averaged like a triple-double on him or whatever. But nonetheless, I think the Warriors have better depth, and I'm just not sure about the Nets' health. But if the Nets are fully healthy, and if Kyrie either gets vaccinated or they change the vaccination law, Harden, Durant, Irving, 100% for 7 games in a 7-game series, those guys will not get beat. But I'm banking that somehow they don't play together for 7 games in the finals. So give me the Warriors over the Nets. I'm probably sleeping on the Suns, but I just trust the Warriors' depth a little bit more than the Suns. The Suns are a very, very perimeter-oriented team, and they're, ironically enough, not as good in the paint as the Warriors. The Warriors get an insane amount of like easy layups in transition, etc., and get some easy points. So I trust the Warriors to make the finals. But Warriors-Suns is going to be a great Western Conference Finals. That would be really fun.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who I picked preseason. I know I had the Nets. I assume the Lakers. I don't know though. But I'll stick with it.
Nets to win it all?
Yes.
Over who?
Whoever my preseason pick was.
Oh,
We'd have to go back to the tape on that one.
it was not the Lakers because I
No.
feel like you wanted to go against me. I feel like I picked the Lakers and you're like, it'll be someone else, but I can't remember who you picked.
I don't know either. It could have been the Suns or Warriors. Could have been.
Nah, it was probably the Suns. I don't think any of us were like, we all said the Warriors will make the playoffs, but I think
Maybe
I
it was
don't
the
think
Clippers.
oh maybe.
Who did you pick?
I had
Nuggets.
Nets over Nuggets.
Well, I could have had the Nuggets as well.
All right, well, hey, I'll repeat the
Regardless,
tape.
I stick with my picks. So
All right, so Nets, and who do you have in the finals though? Pick a team. Warriors or what? Suns?
the Nets.
No, but who do you have making it?
Yeah, I stick with my preseason pick.
But who was your Western Conference pick?
I don't know. That's the problem.
But he's sticking with it.
So
Yeah,
he's
I'm
just
sticking with it.
the Nets. He's
Once
not
one
giving
of
us
you
a
goes
Western
to the
Conference
tape.
team. He's guaranteed the Nets. So here's what you got to do if you're listening. So Drew Brackett has correctly predicted the Bucks last year. I advise you to put some big money on the Nets right now, winning the championship. Because Drew Brackett, the master predictor, has predicted it.
We don't have a legal slush fund, Common. We can't be advising the people on that
All
one.
right.
This is for entertainment purposes only.
All right.
There you
that's
go.
Fair.
Common is the legal slush fund. Then okay.
I advise you follow whatever Drew Brackett picks for champions. That's all I will say, because he's on an unprecedented run.
Yeah, absolutely. I have no idea what I'm doing for the Super Bowl, which is unfortunate because I don't have a side yet.
As far as plans or picks, I mean, aren't you going to go with your preseason, the Rams? You got to roll with your Rams. We'll get into that next week.
We'll get into it next week. Well, we'll move on to the Olympics. Winter Olympics starting up, and Common, wake me up when you're done.
I'll keep this brief. In the Summer Olympics, so I will preface this by saying that I am a huge fan of the Olympics, but I actually prefer the summer over the winter, and I was unemployed last summer at the time, so I had time to kill. So I watched the Olympics religiously, and I got on this show, and I talked for the Olympics ad nauseum. I'll keep this a little short, but these are a few of the storylines that I'll be following and you at home should follow. So the biggest thing going into the Olympics, my mother, my cousin, my aunt, and I, we're going to be Skyping like crazy, talking about this epic men's figure skating in the Olympics. Nathan Chen of the Americans. Nathan Chen, the USA star, perhaps the greatest figure skater of all time, is going for a gold medal. Since he got fifth in the last Olympics when he was a teenager, he's won 17 out of 18 competitions he's played in, and he's actually won 3 world championships. It'll be him against Izuru Hanyu, the Japanese figure skater. Back-to-back gold medals for Izuru Hanyu on the Olympic stage. So Nathan Chen and Izuru Hanyu is going to be an epic showdown on the ice for figure skating. A few other storylines: 3-time Olympic half-pipe gold medalist in snowboard Shaun White, likely in his last Winter Olympics, will be competing. So seeing the ginger Shaun White get the country rolling will be fun. Chloe Kim also looking to defend her snowboard title. She won gold at 17 in the last Olympics. She's now 21. And then this is perhaps my favorite storyline. Do you guys remember Lolo Jones?
Yeah,
what do you remember her
track
for,
and
Tom?
field, right? Former track and field. Now she's on bobsled.
She fell in the 100-meter finals in the Olympics. She was the gold medal favorite in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Get this. How about full circle? Beijing Summer Olympics in 2008. She falls on the hurdles. She's now back in the 2-women bobsled, and she won the world championship in the 2-woman bobsled. She's now 39 years old. looking for an Olympic gold medal in the Winter Olympics, from hurdling on to bobsled, straight out of the Jamaican bobsled team movie, American Style, for Lolo Jones. She's one of 10 American athletes ever to compete in both the Summer and Winter Olympics. That's going to be a fun story. And then, of course, no Olympics for the NHL players because of the COVID. No Olympics for the hockey players. Will be interesting to see how that affects the hockey in the Olympics. And then the biggest story, probably not from a sporting perspective, is that the Olympics are in China. And obviously, this is where the whole COVID-19 virus started. Every athlete in the Olympics must either be vaccinated or be quarantined for 3 weeks in a row prior to the Olympics. They'll be having daily testing of COVID. So how COVID affects the Olympics will be interesting. Hopefully none of the athletes are ruled out because of COVID. That'll be something to track. And only fans allowed are people who are from China. So like if we wanted to go to the Olympics, unless we were covering the Olympics, I think, or we were a Chinese person or an athlete, we wouldn't be able to go. And I did forget one more. Michaela Schifrin could win as many as 5 gold medals in skiing. She is a huge American skiing star. So those are the things to watch. My mom and I will be watching it. We are definitely pumped for that figure skating and our weekly Skype sessions in Bulgaria to break it all down with my cousin and aunt. It'll be fun.
Of course, and while NHL players will not be participating, of course, the epic rivalry between the United States women's hockey team and our neighbors to the north, the Canadian women's hockey team, are going to be going back and forth. I think they've been trading gold and silver medals, time immemorial.
Epic.
So that's going to be definitely fun to watch. You mentioned Shaun White. And then I don't necessarily know the athletes or the main storylines, but I'm definitely looking forward to a couple of different sports. I'm a big fan of the speed skating events, both long and short track. Apollo Antonono, of course, one of the most notable names on the
8
American
medals.
side to have ever done that. Bobsled skeleton is fun to watch, along with luge, just going down tunnels as fast as they can, hard-packed ice.
It's
and
dangerous.
then curling. Let's go ahead and look forward to some curling, a little bit of precision.
Sweet.
It's really fun and intense to watch, kind of like the slow motion version of darts.
I love it. Drew, you gonna watch some Olympics or not so much?
Yeah, I'll have it on. I got a new TV recently, so I'll have it on.
You got a 50-inch?
65.
65.
That's the way to go.
Did you get that from placing big money on the Milwaukee Bucks to win the championship last year?
I wish I did that. No.
There
But
you go.
regardless, I'll be watching the curling. That's, I like them all. If I'm up, I'll watch it. And hopefully, I guess the time difference, a lot of it will be on in the morning. So
it's going to be live
I'll be
on prime
watching
time at 7 o'clock Central Time on NBC. That'll be 8 o'clock your time. Technically,
AM.
some of the early events start on Wednesday. We're recording now on Tuesday. The live coverage starting on Thursday. Opening ceremony is actually on Friday. But the first that I know of for sure will be Olympic coverage on TV is Thursday. We're recording now Tuesday night. I know some people watch us on Wednesday, some watch us Thursday, some Tuesday night. But the Olympics are officially coverage on NBC primetime is on Thursday, starting on Thursday. And this is actually the last day today on Tuesday that we have no Olympics, and then it'll run through February 20th, the Olympics. So almost
Awesome.
3 weeks of Olympics, actually, which will be fun. I think the Winter Olympics are actually like 16 days. The summer are typically, maybe it was 15. So something like that. But it's going to be fun. A lot of fun stuff to look at.
Absolutely. Should we move on to what do we have? Locks of the week. How did we do last week?
Locks of the week. 3-2 week for me. Man, I'm catching up in the standings. How about it? I had 49ers plus 3.5 against the Rams. Got it barely. Rams winning 20-17. Rams Niners under 46.5. I got that one right. 37 points only. Then I had Bengals covering 7 against the Chiefs. Bengals won outright by 3. I did miss the Chiefs Bengals over 54.5, 51 points there. and I missed the Chiefs over at 30.5. They got 24. Should have gone with the Bengals over. I was thinking about doing that, but I went the Chiefs one. 3-2. Rare losing week for both Drew and Tom, who've been having some great weeks. You guys are both 2-3, just under 500. Drew, you got the Niners covering against the Rams. You also got the under in that game, but you had the Chiefs covering, Bengals winning outright, and you missed your NBA picks. You had the Nets covering 3.5 against the Lakers, Lakers winning by 10, and you had the Mavs covering 3.5 against the Warriors. Boy, you missed that one bad. 130-92. What happened there, Drew? 38-point game. Tom, you were 2-3. You also missed the Bengals Chiefs over. You did get the Bengals team total over. You missed Joe Burrow's over 290 on the passing yards. You barely missed Rams minus 3.5 against the Niners, but you did get Cooper Kupp over 105 receiving yards. He had 142. So I won the last week, but I am still in third place at the moment. Drew Brackett, 51, 37-2, 14 games over 500. Nostradamus, the pick master, demolishing all of ESPN's betting staff. You have a better record than all 10 ESPN experts. ESPN, forget it. Fire everyone and hire Drew Brackett. Let's hear what you got for us, pick master.
Yeah, we'll go with the Nets tonight, +6. Don't remember who they're playing off the top of my head.
The Suns.
Spurs.
Oh, yeah. The Suns.
Nets are playing the Suns.
Oh, I've got a different. Oh, Warriors are playing Spurs.
Yes, correct. All right.
So I'll take the Nets +6 tonight, and then we'll go to the soccer. CONCACAF World Qualifying USA game under 2.5 goals. They're gonna win maybe 1-0. They'll probably draw 0-0. And then the Mexico game, also nobody going to score in that one under 2.5 goals as well.
Now, you'll probably hit both of those soccer games. For sure, the USA. USA's had a lot of low
They're just not good.
Games.
And they're not good.
They're not good. They're okay, but they're not good. CONCACAF is probably the worst qualifying region, by the way. So USA,
absolutely. Nobody scores.
USA not making it the last World Cup was arguably the most embarrassing moment in USA sports history. That's how bad it was. But anywho, Tom, what do you got?
So yeah, as I mentioned in Drew's pick, mixing up the teams, but I've got the Spurs -5.5 going up against the Warriors. As we're just finding out, they're sitting just about everybody. And in that vein, DeJounte Murray, I'll take him over 37.5 PRA. That's points, rebounds, and assists. And then give me Kyrie Irving on the road. No Kevin Durant. James Harden is a game-time decision, I believe. Give me Kyrie Irving over 25.5 points.
Awesome.
So
I like it.
a couple player props and one side.
Okay, yeah, that line has shifted. You have it at 5.5 on the Spurs, right?
Yes. Where is it now?
No, it might be 5.5. I had it at 4.5 when I listed it. Let's keep it 5.5. Keep it consistent for the show. I found it as low as 4.5 earlier today. So I'll go with you.
It has moved a lot, yeah.
Okay. Can you get it at 5.5? I'm actually looking at a new betting app that I have, and looks like the best offer I see is -6 on it, actually. I don't know what Bovada has it at right now.
I'm hitting the refresh here.
I see 6.
Bovada now has it at 6. Yes, that has moved a half point.
All right. Are you good with that half a point?
I'll take them at -6. I'm more than comfortable with that.
All right, -6. I'm going to roll with the same pick. Spurs -6 over the Warriors. Warriors are without Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, a.k.a. 4 starters not playing. Andre Iguodala also sitting out. No James Wiseman. I mean, the whole team is gone. It is a road game. It's a back-to-back. Murray is a talented player for the Spurs. Spurs playing some good ball lately. They lost by just 5 against the Suns and beat the Bulls the last time out. So Spurs at home win by more than 6. Then I'm going to go against Drew Brackett. He actually missed his NBA picks last week. So now that the NFL is gone, maybe Drew's Nostradamus status will be gone. We'll see. He'll get the soccer, but he can't get all 3. So I'll go with Suns -6 over the Nets. Suns have won 10 straight games, 7 by more than 6, 8 by at least 6. They're at home against the Nets, who have lost 4 in a row. Booker and CP3 will play. No Durant. Harden is questionable, might not play. So I actually also agree with your Kyrie Irving over. So Spurs -6 over the Warriors, Suns -6 over the Nets. Then I'm rolling with the Bucks -11 over the Wizards. A big 3 all set to play for Milwaukee. Wizards top player Bradley Beal will not be playing. Wizards have lost 5 straight. Milwaukee is 18-9 at home. They should cruise in this game. Bucks winning by 12 or more.
Wow, looking at that Warriors, yeah, Curry's out, Thompson, Wiggins, Green, Porter, Iguodala, Bielitsa, Wiseman. Oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah,
well,
you want to jump in on the action, Drew?
No, I don't. I would love to take like a Chris Chioza over on his points, since he'll probably put up 30 and a victory.
Well,
Jordan
I got
Poole is at
Damian
30 and a
Lee
half
on my DraftKings daily fantasy lineup for $1 tonight.
Who do you have?
Damian Lee of the Warriors. Look for him to have a big game today. Damian Lee is going to ball out. Jordan Poole, obviously, but Damian Lee's going to have a huge game today for the Warriors.
That's incredible. Everybody's out. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to have, like 7 or 8 players? I imagine they're calling up G League guys to play in this game.
Probably.
Could be. Wow.
Jeremy Lin was on the G League squad, I think, last year. Shouldn't have retired. He would have got a shot to play in this game. Could have seen a little Linsanity, baby.
Sure.
So, all right.
Wow. Trivia time?
Trivia time. All right. Well, I'm going to keep this one Olympic themed. This is something a little different. So we don't normally have Olympics. So I'll have one Olympic themed trivia question. I promise this will be it throughout the Olympics, unless I come across something crazy. So only 6 countries have won medals at every Winter Olympic Games. Can you name the 6 countries?
Russia or USSR?
No.
I guess they maybe didn't play.
I think, they weren't at one of those.
Correct.
Sweden.
Yes.
Norway.
Yes.
Finland.
Hold on, let me see if that was one of them. Finland, yes. Good job, guys. You're missing the most obvious one. I mean, come on now.
U.S.
Yes.
Switzerland? Did the Swiss do it? No?
Nope, not the Swiss. So you guys
Canada.
have Canada, yes.
And one more.
You're missing one more.
Oh, man.
I'm impressed. Good job, guys.
We'll go to the Netherlands. Well,
not the Netherlands. They're good at speed skating, though.
Like maybe Germany?
Close.
France.
Austria. Good job,
go.
Tom Castleman.
Nice.
I know Tom knows his geography, unlike most Americans. Good job, Tom. Had to know you would get that one. Nicely done. USA, nice. By the way, is the only country to have won gold in every Winter Olympics. But Norway leads the Winter Olympic medal count, though, overall.
I can believe that. All they have is snow.
That's right. That's all they do. They train for the Winter Olympics. They shine once every 4 years. Have you ever seen the movie Eddie the Eagle, Tom or Drew? That's a great movie.
Have not.
All right. I recommend Eddie the Eagle. Give it a watch. It's based on a true story about a British kid whose only dream was to be an Olympian. And apparently Britain didn't have like hardly any skiers, but he still had to qualify. He just barely qualified. It's like a very emotional, like based on a true story, really, really fun movie to watch. So Eddie the Eagle, check it out. So
nice.
All right. Well, statements of the week time or salutes. Why don't you start us off, Drew?
Hats off to Tom Brady, the GOAT.
Disgusting. I won't get into that. I already talked about it ad nauseum, as Tom would say early in the show. But great career for Brady. Congratulations, Tom. Maybe
everybody enjoy a scoop of
Donald Trump now.
Everybody enjoy a scoop of avocado ice cream tonight.
What? What is that?
Tom Brady's known for, like, he does doesn't. His diet is really, really precise, and so he doesn't eat actual ice cream. He eats an avocado-based ice cream.
Oh God.
I
I like
honestly thought
avocados, but that doesn't sound good.
when he was going to announce his retirement, I thought he would just have a photo of a slice of pizza and a beer and just say,
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Tom Brady looks after post-retirement. See if he changes up that diet a little bit.
No, I think that he'll keep it pretty well under lock and key. I think he'll stick with that. I think.
I guess his wife will probably won't allow him to get too crazy.
Probably not. To be honest, like she's worth way more money than he is because she's like an international famous supermodel.
Sure.
Like,
yeah,
I'm kind of surprised that he hasn't retired sooner. It's like, listen, we have more money than God. Like, you don't have to keep getting beat up every Sunday and occasionally
and that's
Mondays
why he retired.
Thursdays.
I think a lot of it was on
They had
her.
the talk. They had the talk at last.
They had the talk at last. She's like, Tom, enough is enough. So
we've got the crypto commercial money coming in. We're good.
Yeah, they've got money, no problem. And I think Brady will actually make more money too when he retires, signing autographs as well as doing commercials and who knows what. I think it'd be I can see them pairing Brady with Manning on that Monday Night Football mega cast. I can see he's already been on there, but imagine him being full time with the two Mannings, given the rivalry.
I don't think he's going into broadcasting.
Well, once a week type thing. Once a week?
Nah, I think he's got too many other business ventures to deal with.
What are his other business ventures?
He has at least 3 or 4 companies that he co-founded.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, there's TB12. I think that I don't know if this was because of an event that Giselle was at or funding or whatever. I think he does a little bit of fashion, although that could have just been her being like, this is what you're going to wear to our fashion show. But I would imagine he's got clothing going on.
There's an NFT startup called Autographed, and then there's TB12, and then Brady.
Okay. All right, well, we'll see. Wish him all the best of luck. May he have the luck that he's had in his career of football and his business ventures. I'm certain that he will have a lot of it.
Absolutely.
Tom, what do you have?
A salute to Cincinnati Public Schools, making sure that they have the day after the Super Bowl off. They typically have that anyway in years prior, but given the NFL extending the season by 1 week and therefore pushing the Super Bowl back 1 week, Cincinnati Public Schools are adding an additional Monday off so everybody can enjoy the first Super Bowl in Cincinnati in 31 years, I think it is. So definitely good on them. I mean, that's something I would have appreciated when the Bears were in the Super Bowl. I'm sure it's something that a lot of people would appreciate when their teams are in the Super Bowl, that, kids can stay up and watch the game because, quite frankly, that's where you get the next generation of fans. It's, one of the first times where it's like, hey, we're going to order pizza and actually watch the TV while we eat. Big thing for me growing up. I know different households have different rules and everything in place, but those are the memories that are formed, very, very crucial. In fact, my first Super Bowl I can remember really, really well is the Patriots-Rams Super Bowl. And just kind of making a spectacle of the day. This is how you do it, not by making everybody go to school the next day. So I know this is something that's not NFL based. They didn't call up Cincinnati, but definitely a great move by the public school system to put that into play.
And they might be sad if Cincinnati loses. I will say this though: the game is 5:30. I don't know. Maybe other kids have stricter bedtimes, but I feel like I was allowed to stay up till 10 o'clock at least. I mean, that game will be over by 9:30 realistically with the 5:30 kickoff. But yeah, I mean, it's not a bad move. I can't disagree with you.
There's going to be parties. There's going to be all sorts of stuff going on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I just imagine all the kids are really, really sad the next day though if they lose the game. But
then they're off from school, so it's a win-win. No matter what, they don't have to go to classes.
All right, well that's fair. I've got a statement.
Oh,
yeah, I've got a statement. This was crazy because I woke up, so I'm a huge tennis fan. I don't know if you guys know this. I mean, I consider tennis on the level of basketball, soccer, and football for me as my favorite sport. So naturally, I'm a sports historian as well, as you guys know. So Rafael Nadal going for the 21st major to surpass Djokovic and Federer was a crazy story. I went to bed around like, I don't know, 1 or 2 o'clock, and I set my alarm to get up at 4:30 to watch the end of the match. Got up, the match wasn't interesting. I'm like, all right, I'll go back to bed. Got up randomly again at like 5:36 in the morning. I turned it on. Nadal had won the third set, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stay up and watch it. Ended up being over a 5.5-hour match, close to 6 hours. Started just after 2:30. Ended about 8:30, closer to 9 with all the post-game coverage. Had to hear Nadal speak, etc. It was insane. And my statement is this: Rafael Nadal, in the history of sports, is the most mentally tough athlete, mentally and physically tough athlete of all time. He may not necessarily be the most skilled. I'm not saying he's the overall best athlete of all time, but sheer mental, especially mental capacity, number one athlete of all time. He has went through a crazy season. Nadal almost retired a month ago. Mm-hmm. He was this close to retirement. He had a nagging foot injury. He had such a horrible foot injury. He couldn't even practice. It was so bad. 35 years old with a nagging injury. He also had COVID late last year. He's had so many injuries the last few years. The fact that he just played in the Australian Open itself is important enough. And then given what we saw in the final, he was not favored to win against Daniil Medvedev, who's the number 2 player in the world. Djokovic is number 1. Djokovic didn't play in the Australian Open because he wasn't vaccinated. That's a different story in itself. But Nadal loses the first set. Then he takes the lead in the second set, chokes away the second set, down 2-0, 35 years old, coming off a leg injury, coming off COVID, coming off a mental choke job in the second set. The man could have easily laid it down. Guess what? Popped right back up. Mentally and physically kept going over 5 hours. He won the 4th set. He won the 3rd set, won the 4th set. Then in the 5th set, the dude was serving for the match. Nadal chokes away his serve. Could have gotten down again. Guess what? Hops right back up, takes out Daniil Medvedev, gets the break, then serves it out on the next point, and the next game rather. Rafael Nadal, the sheer mental and physical ability to push himself and to not let anything get him down, to keep going. I mean, tennis, I don't know if you guys have read Andre Agassi's autobiography, but tennis perhaps is the most mentally aggressive sport because, as Agassi wrote in his book, you don't have teammates. When you're down, you don't have teammates. You can't even speak to your coaches. They're up top in the box. You're in your own little world in the tennis courts. And even the great Roger Federer, who I love, I've seen him meltdown. Tennis meltdowns happen more than any sport, and they almost never happen to Nadal. Just his sheer mental focus and ability to keep going mentally and physically is unlike anything I've ever seen in the history of sports. Rafael Nadal, the most mentally tough athlete of all time. And that's coming from a Federer fan, Federer being my second favorite athlete of all time. And Nadal, honestly, might be in my top 10 or 15. I just respect him so much that it sucks that he broke Federer's record, and it sucks knowing that Federer probably won't pass him. But I have so much respect for what Nadal does that it's hard not to at least celebrate what he did at the Australian Open and what he's done his whole career. Because he's not as good as Federer and Djokovic. He's incredibly talented, without question. But talent-wise, in his own era, he's the number 3 most talented tennis player, yet he has the most majors of all time. That's incredible. Anything else to add, guys?
I don't have any. I don't follow tennis nearly as closely as you do.
I'm good. Well said. Well stated.
Yeah, I didn't watch as much of the Australian Open as I have years past, but I did catch Rafa in the quarterfinals, Rafa in the final, and I was impressed with both him winning comebacks and him winning, crazy 5-setters, etc. It was really cool to see. That'll do it for this week, guys. We'll be back next week with our Super Bowl special. We'll break down offenses, defenses, special teams, coaches. We'll talk about how long the anthem will be. We'll talk about the coin toss, talk about the Gatorade color. We'll break it all down. Super Bowl special next week after we all watch the Pro Bowl. We haven't even talked about it. Cannot wait for the Pro Bowl. It's going to be incredible.
It's going to be a waste of time.
It's going to be awesome. Justin Herbert, Mac Jones, let the young guys shine. And anywho, half kidding, half not. I would actually watch it, but it's while I'm working. So maybe we'll have it on in the background. Won't be able to do much watching. But that'll do it, guys. We will see you next week. Have an excellent, excellent day to you guys and to all of our viewers. Have a good one.